After our introduction to the basic Marxist ideas and after our introduction to some of the uh, background ideas which are relevant to this essay, we now come to the main part of the essay. We will begin our discussion from section 2. Section 2 begins with a very important statement where it is said that even with the most perfect reproduction, one thing stands out: the here and now of the work of art, its unique existence in the place where it is at this moment. Now, this is something which is, according to Benjamin, something central to the traditional conception of art or to the traditional understanding of art. Here, obviously, the subject is the original work of art and its reproduction. And on this subject of the relationship between the original and the reproduction, uh, the second section begins with this statement that even with the most perfect reproduction, one thing is missing. I translate stands out as missing. It says that now I have already drawn your attention to the fact that basically the essay deals with two methods of producing art. One is the method of producing art manually and then reproducing it manually, and the other is producing art technologically and reproducing art technologically. Section 2 gives us a very elaborate description of the two methods, the relationship and the opposition between these two methods, the differences in these two methods, and the rest of the essay is also about the larger implications of this shift from manually produced art and its manually produced copies to technologically produced art and technologically produced copies. So in conventional and in traditional art, the relationship between the original and its copy is characterized and defined by the fact that the original has three things which the reproduction is supposed not to possess. What is that? The original possesses what is differently described as number one, the a unique existence. Okay. The unique existence. Later on, this unique existence is variously described as the here and now, the aura, the authority, and even genuineness. Now, these things are not there in the manually reproduced copy. And the writer goes on to say that as far as the history of the artwork is concerned, the history unfolds in relation to these two things. Uh, I am reading the next line for you, but it is on that unique existence and on nothing else that the history has been played out, to which during the course of its being, it has been such. In simple words, we can say that the history of a work of art is uh, is built, is composed of these three attributes of a work of art. the value of a work of art is assessed in relation to these three things: its genuineness, its aura, and the what has been described as the here and now of the work of art. A little later in the same section, it is said the here and now of the original constitute the abstract idea of its genuineness. And he says that this genuineness, or this the here and now which is described as genuineness, is extremely important in judging the value of the work of art. Now, the genuineness, what has been described as genuineness, and which is something very important to the value of the work, is related with two things. One is the physical structure, that is this work, artwork, original. So with sculptures, with manuscripts, if it is found that the work of art is original, okay, on the basis of chemical analysis, on the basis of historical authenticity, if it is said that it is physically the work is the original one, the value goes up, or it is treated as extremely valuable. Similarly, the ownership of the original has also a very big role in deciding the value of a work of art. So, with the advent, with the advancement of the technologically produced art, and with the advancement of the technologically produced copies, the relationship between the original and the copy changes. This is described in the statement I am reading for you. The statement says, the whole province of genuineness is beyond technological reproducibility. I am reading it again, the whole province of genuineness is beyond technological reproducibility. What are the implications of this statement? This we can understand by making a list of things that we can associate with manually reproduced copies and technologically reproduced copies of a work of art. Here is the list. So, if we say that there are two types of works of art and two types of reproductions of the work of art, manual and reproduction, we can follow these points as far as the differences between the two are concerned. Manually produced, technologically produced. In the manually produced copy, genuine article, the original one, retains its importance, its authority. In the case of technologically produced copies, the genuine article does not retain its authority. Secondly, a technologically produced copy of an original work of art cannot be said to be a forgery. The technologically produced work of art is not, we can say, superior to its copy. In technologically produced, because technologically produced copies are as good as the original. there is very little difference between the two. Then it is believed that a manually produced copy cannot faithfully reproduce all the minute details and aspects of the original work of art. A technologically produced copy can faithfully reproduce all the aspects and the minutest details of the original. A manually reproduced copy depends on the original for its value. A copy which is manually produced would have no meaning if other than in relation to the original work. On the other hand, the uh, technologically produced copy does not depend on the original for its value. It is valuable in itself. So, in a nutshell, we can say that a manually reproduced copy of a work of art is considered to be of less value as compared to the original, whereas the technologically reproduced copy of a work of art does not have lesser value as compared to the original. This is the difference in the relationship between the manual work of art and its copy, the technologically produced work of art and its copy. So the writer goes on to say after this that while in relation to manual reproduction, the genuine article keeps its full authority. In relation to the reproduction by technological means, that is not the case. Why? Because he says that the aura of the original begins to shrink. The aura of the original, the importance of the original work of art begins to shrink because the work of art can be faithfully reproduced exactly in the same way with the help of technological means. So, uh, yes. So, even if the circumstances into which the product of technological production of the work of art may be introduced in no way impair the continued existence of what this is important. The here and now will any case be devalued. The the uh, idea that the work which was originally produced in a particular situation cannot be reproduced or it has a unique importance. It is a one of a kind thing. This, all these ideas get devalued, they lose their relevance, they they get diluted once technology comes, once photography is introduced and art is redefined once it is produced technologically, and more importantly, the relationship between the work of art and its reproduction completely changes. This I have tried to explain by giving you a list of differences between the manually produced copy and the technologically produced copy. The main, uh, no, the central idea in which is that when copies are made technologically, the the original is no more superior and the copy is no more inferior. This is his main point. The original was considered to be superior because it was considered to be a one of a kind thing that No one can produce what a famous painter, a famous sculptor, a famous writer has once produced in written, in painted, or in sculpted forms. So now, with the advent of photography, the hand of the man, both in making art and in copying art, is freed. The work is done by the machine. The production is done by the machine, and the copying is also done by the machine. Man has minimum role in clicking a photograph, and man has minimum role in reproducing the photograph. So this you need to understand, that the role of the human hand, by which we mean that the role of the human consciousness, the consciousness of the artist, the consciousness of the, the creative figure, decreases, because now the work is done with the help of machine. So another statement which is there towards the end of this essay is again very important and quite closely related to the things that we have been discussing. It says reproductive technology, we might say in general terms, removes the thing reproduced from the realm of tradition. In making many copies of the reproduction, it substitutes for its unique incidents a multiplicity of incidents. And with this section, we can say, comes to a close. So this section 2, basically deals with the technological work of art and the technologically produced work of art, technologically reproduced work of art, and how this changes the relationship between the original and the copy, and how it uh, it we can say uh, uh, you know reduces the importance of such ideas as genuineness, one of a kind, unique, etc., etc. Because for one work of art, you have multiplicity of copies. The next section, section 3, deals with the sense perception, or we can roughly call it the interpretation of art by different societies. In the beginning, we said that every society has its own methods of producing art. Now, in this section, the writer goes further to say that every society has its own ways of receiving art, or we can say has its own way of interpreting art, depending upon the kind of consciousness the uh, people living in that society possess. So the uh, the the substance of this section, we can say, can be summarized in one sentence. We can say that just as every age has its own art, every age has its own system of receiving, perceiving, and interpreting. So, when the system of making art changes with the technological means, with the introduction of technological means, the system of receiving art should also change. The system of perceiving and interpreting art should also change. This leads to a very important, we can say, assumption. That is that neither art nor the artistic process, creativity, nor the, the systems of interpretation are absolute or timeless in nature. Everything changes with the change in the society. So, medieval period, ancient times, earlier ages had their own art, had their own mechanisms of interpreting art. The new age, mechanical age, technological, means are bound to yield, result in new form, new methods of interpreting. So we can extend this further and reformulate our statement by saying that differences in interpretation also grow out of social change. Okay? He uses the term social upheaval again and again. So, the as society changes, as and when social change takes place, everything changes. The methods of producing art, the methods of the mechanisms of creativity, the materials for producing art, and the the methods of understanding art, interpreting art. Everything is related with social change. And I will just read a few lines from the essay. Within major historical periods, this is section 3. Within major historical periods, along with the changes in the overall mode of being of the human collective, there are also changes in the manner of sense perception. This is exactly what I was trying to describe. The manner in which human sense perception is organized, the medium in which it occurs, is dictated not only naturally but historically. So in this essay, you have a constant opposition, a constant, you know, a constant, we can say, opposition. We can stick with the word opposition between history, tradition, history, and tradition. So the writer seems to take a historical view rather than a traditional view. In traditional view, art, or in earlier societies, art was related with the idea of, we can say, genius, with the idea of some divine creative faculty, with the idea of some kind of, extraterrestrial inspiration, which the artists used to produce works of art. Then art was related with the idea of, genuineness, that a piece of art is a one of a kind thing, it cannot be reproduced. And genuineness, they had, we can say, a special authority which is described as aura. So all these things gets demolished with the changes in the society. So earlier, the copy of a work of art was treated as something which was of very little value. Something it was not treated at the same level as the original, because it was very difficult to make copies, to reproduce that one of a kind thing which a master had made. But with the coming of machines, this has changed. So art has changed, the relationship between art and art and its copies has changed. And in the next section, the writer says that even the system of interpreting art has changed. Sense perception also has changed. Okay. Now, this is something I was going to talk later on, but I can just hint at it, that in the new system, in the new social structure, gradually copies will become more important than the. This is what he means to say, because uh, when refined means of technological production, which have come into existence as the outcome of the intensification of the human activity of producing and selling, producing things, selling things, making more and more advanced means of production. Camera is one of the outcomes of that long process under which human beings have developed latest means of technological and scientific production. Camera is not something which has come from the sky. It has been produced just like other commodities in the factories. And the earlier means of producing art were simple tools. Now, because we are in an age of science and technology, the means of producing art are also have also changed in line with the changes. And thereafter, he makes exactly this point when he says that yes, I will just read 1, 2 lines here. And if changes in the medium of perception occurring in our own day may be understood as fading of aura, the social conditions of that fading can be demonstrated. He says, we have already said that the aura is going to fade, that the works of art now, because they are produced with machines, cannot be appreciated in the same way because now the human role is less in producing art. Yes. But he says this fading of aura is not taking place by itself. It is something related with social change. Social change. Then, in a brief section, he describes aura. What is aura? And the one word he chooses to describe aura is remoteness. So earlier, the relationship between art and the and the person who uh, no, the person who received art was one of remoteness. We can explain this with so many different examples. I will come to it. But he says, by aura, we mean that when art had an aura, when it had an auric character, the relationship between the art and the people who received art was one of remoteness. Just as he says, when we sit in an open space and we look at a mountain in a distance, okay, we feel the aura of the mountain and we feel a distance between us and the mountain. That was the kind of relationship which people had with works of art, relationship of aura. But he says, with the changes in the society, now these changes are covered under the terms the rise of socialism. He says, and with the rise of socialism, with the changes in the basic structure of the society, with industrialization, with rise of capitalism, and with the subsequent rise of socialism, he says the conception of art has changed. So I will read this line for you. The fading has to do with two circumstances, both of which are connected with the increasing significance of the masses in the present day life. The fact is, getting closer to things in both spatial and human terms is every bit as passionate a concern of today's masses as their tendency to surmount the uniqueness of each circumstance by seeing it in reproduction. What is this? What is the meaning of this? It is very simple. That as man goes on conquering space, time, okay, this was and matter in the progress in the historical progress of human life, man begins to master all aspects of life, space, time, matter. So in such a situation, the possibility of maintaining the aura of one or the other thing is not there. Because now, with the revolutionary changes taking place in the society, people or man has become more empowered. And this is what he means by this line, that getting closer to things, both spatial and human terms, is every bit a passionate concern. Then there is a tendency to surmount the uniqueness of each circumstance. So now man has got the resources to understand things in an objective way very closely. So here, because of this, the relationship of common people with art is changing. So we will stop here. Tomorrow we'll continue.